Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This one is going to be a little bit of a different thing here in that this is going to be a little bit of a response explanation video here. As you can see from the title, I'm going to explain here in a lot of detail the details around Cosmic Korra as well as what Jinora does in the Book 2 finale. So all of this relates basically to the Book 2 finale, Light in the Dark, Darkness Falls is included a little bit in there. And the reason I'm doing this video is because the amount of times I'll just be looking up, other people talking about Korra, and this just gets brought up as like being this kind of weak part of Book 2, really weak, that the finale is just kind of crazy, it's all over the place, it's overly complicated. What's up with random blue giant Korra? No one has a clue what Jinora does, and it's just like I get frustrated when I see it because, in my opinion, both of these moments are explained fairly well in the show, and inevitably the people laying these criticisms at the feet of Korra, and especially Book 2, are saying it from a perspective of Avatar never had these problems. Avatar The Last Airbender never had these sort of problems. Korra ruins all of this spirit stuff with all this kind of new stuff that it brings in, and the way Avatar does spirits is perfect. And so I just wanted to do this video to, one, talk about what happens here in these moments, which I personally really like, and explain them and get across that they're not as complicated as you think. Now, oftentimes when I see this, I tend to sort of lead, if I actually commit to okay, I want to discuss this with this person. I tend to lead with this idea of like, okay, so Cosmic Korra, big giant blue Korra, is a problem and doesn't make any sense, but we're perfectly fine with accepting Koizilla from Book 1 Water. They're both giant blue things, waterbending and stuff like that, but we can accept what's going on there, but we can't seem to accept what's going on with Cosmic Korra. Similarly, like a lot of people will say, oh, the Jinora thing from Book 2 finale also is this giant Deus Ex Machina, it makes no sense, it's a terrible writing decision, it's just stupid. A lot of people will just say that and just leave it at that, and say, other stuff is better, Avatar is better. And again, on a similar point, you kind of point out like, oh yeah, because like it's not like Avatar is anything that in any way is kind of confusing or complicated if you look back on it and kind of treat it in the same way, and that like Yue becoming the moon spirit is actually a fairly weird and complicated thing in terms of like going into the details on it. Again, I'll talk about this more towards the end of the video. I'm just bringing it up to kind of start the discussion here. So Yue becoming the moon spirit is a bit weird. The whole Koizilla thing, in the grand scheme of things, is, is that any more complicated than what happens with Cosmic Korra? I don't think so. Similarly, Aang dying, being healed by Katara, and this all leading to the whole plot of Aang doesn't have the Avatar state in Book 3, but he gets it back by his back hitting off the rock. That's a complicated plot that, you have to really track through a bunch of episodes, remember a lot of details to get to that point. And again, a lot of times, these moments get criticized for being kind of sort of Deus Ex Machina, but because Korra is the kind of newer thing, it tends to get most of the criticism on that front, and we've moved away from sort of criticizing Book 3 and more criticizing Book 2 of Korra for that sort of stuff. And then again, final point, obviously energy bending, just the line turtle and energy bending in general coming right in at the end. Are we okay with that being introduced right at the end? The point I'm trying to make here is that I don't have any problem with those Avatar moments. I don't have any problem with the Korra moments because I can think about the show and come up with the explanation, because most of the time it is given. The point I'm making here is that for me, Korra, and especially Korra Book 2, is much more direct with its explanation. It actually gives you like the facts, the details to figure it out, whereas with Avatar, a lot of the time it is just like a lot of assumptions, they're not overly specific when it comes to spirit world stuff. That's why Book 2 Spirits is actually so important, because it's where most of the facts about how the spirit world works actually comes from. But anyway, let's jump into the explanation. So we're going to start off with Cosmic Korra, the complete explanation on how this works and what's going on with Cosmic Korra. So first of all, I'll get technical in a minute, but is it really that complicated? We know you can separate your spirit from your body. We know about cosmic energy from Avatar The Last Airbender, and we know that the Tree of Time is a very powerful object. In short, Korra powers up her spirit using cosmic energy, which she connects to using the Tree of Time. That's the explanation. That's what happens on screen, and I don't think it's really that complicated in the grand scheme of things. She's using an insanely powerful object to channel insanely powerful energy into herself, and she chooses to direct that energy through her spirit to fight Vaatu. And that's why she can go giant, and so on. Is it really that much more complicated than Koizilla, where it's like, okay, the Avatar can combine with the ocean spirit to create a giant monster? Like, that sort of thing. So, now let's get into the technical aspect of what's going on here. So, if Korra is not the Avatar at this point, why does it have to be her that uses the Tree of Time? Why can't someone else just use the Tree of Time, project their spirit, and also become giant? Does it have to be Korra, given she's not the Avatar at this point in time? The simple answer would be that she's the only really spiritual person present with Jinora off elsewhere, because of course Jinora, we'll talk about in the second half of this video, is off doing her thing, so she can't be the one to go in there, and she'd be the only other likely candidate to do this. But realistically, she is the only one who can do this. Korra is the only one who can do this because of the amount of energy involved. So let's get into explaining energy limits on the human body in Avatar. So, first of all, some quotes. So, from Beginnings, a lot of this comes from Beginnings. So the airline turtle says, "You already carry the power of fire. No human has ever held two elements at the same time." Raava says, "The only way for me to give you the other element is to pass through your body and combine our energies." Juan says, "When you pass through me, I feel an incredible rush of power. I feel like I'm changing. The more we practice, the stronger I become." And then Raava says, "Juan, I have to leave your body or I'll destroy you." All of these quotes are directly relating to stuff with regards to a human body and what it can handle. So the line turtle basically reveals to us here that a human can't hold the power of two elements at the same time without something crazy happening to allow that to be the case. Similarly, we know that from multiple parts of Beginnings, that when a human basically a spirit jumps inside a human, basically a couple of things can happen. We know that the spirit can either choose to morph that human, where they really they change their physicality and they begin to become kind of partially like a spirit, and if they stay in there long enough, they can kill the human. In Raava's case, given that Raava is just a spirit of light and doesn't have any obvious visual things that she can necessarily pass on to who she's going inside, apart from light, it very much is the direct energy. When they do the whole proto-avatar state thing from Beginnings, we see that she basically explains that if I stay inside you too long, you will die. You will die if I wait in here too long, with the idea that your body will effectively explode from the amount of energy Raava being inside him exerts. And you combine all of these aspects together of basically what is the Avatar? It is this human energy container for the power of four elements plus an insanely powerful spirit. So the explanation on screen here, this means that we know there's a limit to the amount of energy a human can contain within their body, whether that be the power of an element or a spirit merging with them. Juan and Raava, prior to fusing, worked together to help Juan learn the four elements, one at a time. Juan held one, and Raava the other three. The process of switching elements was Raava passing through Juan, and over time, Juan grew more powerful and was able to contain more and more energy within his body. The proto-avatar state only exists because of Juan changing to hold more energy. The idea being that initially he could only handle Raava passing through him for a second. But by the time he gets to solving some of these issues and trying to stop that sort of thing, he can hold Raava within him for at least a couple of seconds without immediately dying. Whereas previous times we've seen humans, spirits go inside humans, All it takes is a second and they're spirit morphed. That's what happened to Yao with becoming the tree. It's what happened to Tokuga in the Turf Wars comics with him, being morphed by the dragon eel spirit. He was only inside him for a little bit, but immediately turns him basically half spirit into half dragon. So the fact that Wan, as you can see in this picture here, can contain that amount of energy, all 4 elements within him, and Raava, this is prior to their fusing, shows the idea of, the adaptability of humans, that there's a set amount of energy that most people have, and that's enough to contain one element. But Wan got more powerful to the point where, at the very least, he could handle 4 being within him at once, and Raava being in there for a certain amount of time. But not enough to hold multiple elements by himself yet. And that's the significance of the fusing and harmonic convergence. So, here we go. When Raava and Wan fuse at harmonic convergence, the result is that Wan can contain the power of Raava with no issues, even in the avatar state. The threat of the power killing the avatar is a non-factor after the fusing, after the formation of the avatar. When Raava is ripped out of Korra and destroyed, we see that Korra can still bend multiple elements. This reveals to us that the fusing event of Raava and Wan made Wan and his reincarnations natural benders of all 4 elements. It does not appear to be the case that Raava always holds 3 of the 4. This also means Korra still has the natural ability to hold an incredible amount of energy within herself. Now, if you want proof as to why she can bend multiple elements, here are some screenshots. As you can see here, as she jumps into the Tree of Time prior to doing the whole Cosmic Korra thing, you can see that she uses airbending to get in here. Tenzin also uses airbending to jump in there, and Korra follows him in, and you can see in this picture, she is airbending in. Then, of course, when we get to the Cosmic Korra moment, we see that she uses spirit bending, which is a water bending technique. She's controlling that water to create the spiral around Vaatu. She has 2 of the elements at the very least. And then with the idea that Raava is actually destroyed, obviously Raava kind of resets. If Raava was destroyed while still holding element to elements, those elements would be gone. So that confirms to us that the avatar as a human always has the 4 elements as part of them in the aftermath of harmonic convergence. So that's an important point to keep in mind. So moving on, cosmic energy, we'll tackle this next. So what we've just covered is Korra and how she's able to basically channel that amount of energy through her body even when she's not the avatar. It's because the avatar is a special human even with Raava outside of their body. They can still harness have a huge amount of energy flow through them. Next up, cosmic energy, which is what she's channeling. What is it? How does this work? So, cosmic energy is implied to be the ultimate form of energy in the Avatar universe. In Avatar The Last Airbender, we learn that cosmic energy is effectively the power source for the Avatar state. The main way to use cosmic energy is to unlock all 7 chakra points, with the emphasis on the thought chakra, the 7th one, which directly deals with cosmic energy. In K214, that's Light in the Dark, we see that the Tree of Time can also be used to connect to cosmic energy. This connection is probably amplified here due to harmonic convergence. So that's an important one to note as well. And I have this quote here from Tenzin. He says, "This tree had a history long before it held Vaatu. This is the Tree of Time, and the legends say its roots bind the spirit and physical worlds together." And he also kind of notes that like the ancients used to meditate under the tree and connect to the cosmic energy. And the point I just make there is that connecting and also channeling large amounts of cosmic energy are very different. So what's unique and specific to Korra here is that she's directly like channeling an absurd amount of energy through herself to form Cosmic Korra. Whereas the point that Tenzin makes here is that in the past, people used to just connect to the energy of the universe. It's not the same as using it. So just a distinction that I think is fairly important to make in all of this. And yeah, harmonic convergence is a factor in both scenarios here, and it's just important to note that this amplifies all spiritual energy. It basically amplifies everything because it's the most energetic event in the Avatar universe. So that's important to note. And then as for the Avatar and Korra cosmic energy connection. Here's the moment from the guru of Aang nearly connecting with cosmic energy, and here's the moment of Korra nearly connecting with cosmic energy. So, it's set up from the previous show, and they just decide to use it again here, and I think in a fairly logical way. If the Tree of Time is that powerful of an object, of course it can be the thing to help you connect, if you're spiritual enough, to a power source like cosmic energy. So a little bit more in the Tree of Time here. In this situation, the only thing that's really important about the Tree of Time is that it's the most powerful object in the Avatar universe. It binds the physical and spirit world together. So we get Korra channeling huge amounts of cosmic energy through an incredibly powerful object like the Tree of Time. During harmonic convergence, she and she alone can contain this amount of energy because as the Avatar, her body is special with how much energy it can contain. She's also spiritual enough to connect to the tree in the first place. So all of these are just pointing out why it's Korra on her own who's the only one who can do this, and the details surrounding it. So, as for the result of this energy, Korra projects her own spirit from her body, and the cosmic energy is what makes it so big. We know spirits outside of a body are blue when in the physical world. This exact coloring here with Cosmic Korra is probably due to a combination of cosmic energy as well as harmonic convergence, amplifying everything. And then we see Cosmic Korra can fire an energy beam as well as use water bending and physical attacks. And as we get here, in short, Cosmic Korra is really not that complicated of a thing to happen. It all makes sense within the universe and can be understood on both a basic and technical level, as I just explained. And, I for one would actually like to see the return of this if something else kind of crazy happened. Just the idea that this is something that she can do as this ultimate kind of last resource thing. And then I'd especially like to see what this is like if she does it while having Raava within her. I don't think it would necessarily restrict her from being able to do this, but I assume it'd be basically that, but it would probably have the Raava symbol across her body like we've seen before, and it should be just all the more powerful because she'd have the light spirit in her as well. So very cool thing that they can come back to anytime I think they need to. And then very quickly here, I think most people tend to just bring up the idea of the big blue Korra as the problem, but if you have a problem with just the giants in general, Vaatu, let's quickly cover him. As for her giant sparring buddy Vaatu, it is the Dark Avatar, with Raava nothing but a dot of light at this point. Plus the fact that Vaatu doesn't actually care about Unalaq. Why would he care about keeping Unalaq's form as is when he himself can grow to be a giant? So we know that Vaatu can get super big if he needs to just on his own. So as the Dark Avatar, as Vaatu, why would he not also want to assume such a big size given what he's planning to do? Why would he care about damaging or basically making Unalaq's body kind of irreparable? The point here is that Raava doesn't alter the form of the human she is fused with because of the respect between both sides of the fusion. Because obviously Raava as a spirit is able to kind of change form at will because she's effectively mainly formed of energy. Whereas I think Raava understands that if she chose to morph the body of the human that she's with, she's kind of basically irreparably damaging the body. And that's kind of the difference here. So, and then, as far as the whole just general giant point goes, Book 2 is the most cataclysmic event we've seen in Avatar. The fate of both worlds is at stake, and with the type of character the Vaatu is, it makes complete sense why he would want to go big, and Korra goes big to counter him. I think that's the thing that's sort of easy to forget in all of this, but compare any of the finales to the Book 2 finale, and the Book 2 one is far and away the most kind of dangerous event, in that all of Avatar is basically about a war. The Book 1 finale is more of a kind of political issue, and it's the same with basically Book 3 and 4. But here is this kind of both world kind of potentially ending event of an era of darkness would mean the end for humanity. It would mean all spirits will be dark all the time, and I think because of that, it makes sense why you choose to go with a big fight like that, giants battling over the fate of the world, where the only two people that could take part in this fight are Korra and Vaatu Unalaq. So I've never really had a problem with that, and the idea that it's complicated I just find to be really, really weird. But anyway, let's move on. So second up is, what did Jinora do to help Korra? Again, I don't feel it's particularly complicated or confusing. So my simple explanation for this is this. Jinora said she had something else to do. She is one of the most powerful spiritual characters that we know, and this is again amplified because of harmonic convergence. All she does is that she shifts the balance of light and dark slightly to allow Korra to see Raava within Vaatu. Because, just a little bit more context here, the balance of light and dark is what determines the size of Raava and Vaatu. So Jinora comes in there, blasts the world with a bit of light. Raava goes from being invisible to actually being able to be seen, and that's how Korra is able to actually see and then take out Korra again. So let's explain all of this in case you've forgotten anything. So let's get technical. Let's first explain Jinora's actions. She has been a spirit separated from her body for multiple episodes at this stage. She has just been saved from the fog of lost souls by Tenzin. Before returning back to her body, she says that she has to go and help Korra. So she's projecting her spirit as she helps Korra. Her physical body is not involved in all of this beyond the fact that, it's actually dying because she's been away from her body for so long. So this technique that Jinora uses is not just the simple one that everyone who is spiritual uses. Separating their spirit from... so as I say here, this technique is not as simple as just someone who is spiritual separating their spirit from their body. We've seen many characters do that. This is a special airbender technique Jinora has, and she explains it in Book 3 to us. But we know for sure that it is used in Book 2. So Jinora explains to Kai that it's a high-level airbender move with a little spiritual stuff thrown in. And as for what's special about it, beyond the, separating your spirit from your body, so what it does is, Jinora can basically teleport her spirit by locking onto the energy of someone she has a connection with. This is how she suddenly appears out of nowhere right next to Korra. The technique is made more powerful thanks to harmonic convergence, hence why she can move from the spirit world into the physical world to be next to Korra. In Book 3, she uses this, she obviously separates her spirit from her body, and she locks onto Kai's energy to find where he is and teleports her spirit there. Whereas otherwise, without this airbending special technique that Jinora has, all we've seen is that you separate your spirit from your body, you maybe directly pass it over into the spirit world at a random point, but from there, there's very little you can do in terms of just teleporting wherever you want. So that's what the airbending aspect, what makes this technique special that Jinora is using. So next, as for why Jinora is not the typical blue of a human spirit outside their body in the physical world. We know harmonic convergence amplifies spiritual energy. I think this is what allows Jinora to look like this in spirit form in the physical world, similar to how Cosmic Korra is a different shade of blue than the usual due to cosmic energy. And then as a kind of connected side note, we know humans can become spirits by leaving their body behind, and over time they become an actual spirit, where they retain colour in the physical world. The Painted Lady is an example of this. Is harmonic convergence almost turning Jinora into a full spirit? And what I mean by that, I couldn't fit in the full explanation I wanted on this one slide, is that because of harmonic convergence, does it sort of temporarily give Jinora's spirit the power that basically, I suppose, she would naturally have if she actually did stay and became a spirit? That's why she's able to retain the kind of color, and why she basically looks like an actual spirit, kind of almost like an angel, when she arrives into the physical world, because of the amount of energy, how spiritual she is. It's like an early kind of look at what, I suppose a human who turns into a spirit kind of becomes. I think that's a really interesting angle to take on it, given the whole, Korra is still blue, but it's a kind of more energetic, shade of blue because of the cosmic energy. So, next up, so what does Jinora actually do? So we know how she kind of gets there and appears before Korra. But when she does arrive on the scene, what does she actually do? So, when she says she has something to do, it's in response to Raava being destroyed and Unavaatu forming. At this stage, darkness is in complete control, with little to no light. Raava still exists, but only as a non-visible dot of light. The only time we see light spirits after Unavaatu forms is the group of butterfly spirits around Jinora. When she leaves to go to Korra, she leaves with one butterfly light spirit. So you can see that here in this screenshot. This is her just before she sort of kind of like disappears, and then the next time in the show that we see her is basically when she arrives on scene. So you can see she has one butterfly spirit with her there. I think she gives the other one to her father to lead them out of the spirit world. So when she arrives then to help Korra, you can see she doesn't have that butterfly spirit with her, but what she does have is this ball of light, and that's kind of what she does. So, and then on a similar note, it's also important to note that at the time, every other spirit that we see basically on screen is a dark spirit. Like Tenzin, Mako, and so on. They're all being attacked at the Tree of Time. They're trying to get at Korra to stop her projection. They're all being attacked by dark spirits. So the only light spirits in the entire world, basically, are around Jinora, and that's a very special point as well. So when she arrives to help Korra, she has no spirit with her, and what she does is engulf the area, including Unavaatu, with light for a brief moment. After this, Raava is visible to Korra within Unavaatu. The logical assumption is that she uses the light spirit that came with her, and combined with her own spirituality, as well as harmonic convergence, this shifts the balance from complete darkness to there being at least some light left. And as another note, the music piece that plays during this moment is called Jinora's Light. So what she's doing is fundamentally associated with light, and what she ultimately, the result of this is that the light spirit is visible again. So that's a note. That's a kind of interesting connection to make as well. So as you can see here is Unavaatu getting sort of blasted by the light. He just kind of blocks his eyes. It doesn't really do anything to him. It's not an attack. But in the aftermath of this, suddenly Raava, who we know when destroyed begins to grow again within Vaatu, suddenly begins to light up within himself. The darkness is not like 100% anymore. Suddenly the growth of like Raava within him is kind of beginning to start now, because it was kind of sped up by Jinora blasting the last remaining light from the other light spirits at him. And that allows Korra to, rip out Raava from within Vaatu, Unavaatu. So, continuing on, we know Raava and Vaatu can both influence spirits to become light or dark, but also that Raava and Vaatu's size is dependent on the balance of light and dark, which for the most part is determined by light and dark spirits. So the influence of light and dark works both ways. In this case, Jinora steps in to shift towards the light, which makes Raava bigger. So the point there is that Raava and Vaatu can both influence spirits to become light or dark, but also if the balance of the rest of basically the spirit population is shifted too much in one way, that sort of determines the size of Raava and Vaatu, and I suppose ultimately how powerful they are. And that's why going into harmonic convergence with Wan, Vaatu is huge and Raava is small enough to fit in the teacup. So that's an important one to note. Now let's cover more on how Raava and Vaatu work in detail. Here are some quotes. So Raava says, "Now that Vaatu is free, he is turning other spirits dark. The more spirits he turns, the stronger he becomes." So that's what they're getting at there, is really you're meant to interpret stronger as being bigger, and then, being bigger also means, more strength as well. Wan says, "He's getting bigger and you're getting smaller." Raava replies to this directly and says, "As darkness grows, light fades." That's the whole point I was trying to get at here, of the light and dark balance. So we also have this one here. Wan says, "If you and Vaatu have the same fight every 10,000 years, why hasn't one of you destroyed the other?" Raava says, "He cannot destroy light any more than I can destroy darkness. One cannot exist without the other. Even if I defeat Vaatu in this encounter, darkness will grow again inside me until he emerges again. The same will hold true if Vaatu defeats me." And it's actually pretty notable that pretty much these two lines of dialogue are both actually repeated. They're said initially in beginnings, and then they're repeated again basically as Korra is meditating in the Tree of Time. And they say this obviously to remind you of this fact, to remind you that even though it seems like Raava has been destroyed, she can't ever truly go away for good, and that she'll always be there within Vaatu and will grow eventually until they get to the next harmonic convergence, at which point she'll be in with an even chance of winning at that harmonic convergence. So that's the kind of important note to make. But the difference here is that Jinora speeds up this process and allows Raava to grow and become visible again to Korra, and that kind of saves the day. So the size of Raava and Vaatu shows us the current status of the balance of light and dark. Vaatu grows in size by turning spirits into dark spirits. He then shifts the balance almost 100% to darkness when Raava is destroyed. We know she cannot truly be wiped from existence. That's why I have destroyed in commas. So by the time the Jinora scene happens, Raava is growing inside Vaatu as Unavaatu, but she is nothing but a near invisible dot of light. Hence why it is so significant that Jinora has light spirits around her. This should not be possible with Raava so tiny, but Jinora herself is so spiritual, spirits can remain light around her. This is what allowed Korra to find the light in the dark. And that's the explanation for that. I think it's pretty clear what she does, and I'm always shocked that so many people have such a huge, problem understanding that general idea of it just being Jinora supplies a little bit of extra light to the situation, and that allows Raava to grow. Because again, the Raava Vaatu thing is like repeated as like a flashback kind of line of dialogue within the episode that it happens in. So they really do double down on that to make it like twice as clear. But again, here, come towards the end of the video. The point of this video is to show that both of these scenes have an explanation, both a simple one and a technical one with a lot of detail. And the point I'm making there is just that there's a way you can there's an understanding to it without really thinking about the details. You just get the basic idea of like, oh yeah, I see what she did there. She put light on Raava, that made Raava bigger. Okay, cool. But then there's also the technical details of like, oh, here's everything about how energy works. Here's everything about how Jinora's spiritual powers work as well. It is all there pretty much to be explained. The next point I have here is we're often so quick to criticize Korra and praise ATLA that we lose sight of the fact that Korra has strengths and ATLA has weaknesses. One of the weaknesses ATLA has is that it definitely has moments that could do with being better explained. Just as some brief examples, 107 as the introduction of the spirit world is actually a somewhat confusing episode since we never actually see the spirit world. And it creates this weird dynamic where it's just Aang's spirit separated from his body in the physical world, which is a little bit of a mouthful even to say, but note how I used basically the reverse explanation to kind of get there, in that basically it's actually Jinora's technique which fully, I suppose, explained to us the whole dynamic behind the spirit projection thing, which I think helped us to gain a better understanding of 107. Because it was much clearer about what was going on. And as well on that subject, Korra just in general, of creating the distinction between like going into the spirit world body and spirit versus going into the spirit world with just your spirit, and the difference between the two. And here we also get explained to us, I suppose, the idea of the difference between your spirit in the spirit world and your spirit in the physical world, and the whole blue appearance of your spirit versus otherwise. But again, it is a confusing episode because it is Heibai kind of taking people into the spirit world, and even then, like a spirit like Heibai having the ability to just like have like a personal kind of path into the spirit world or out of it, not using the portals, is a bit weird as well. You can tell like back in ATLA, not all of the details of the spirit world and how it exactly works were figured out, so a lot of the early stuff ends up feeling a bit different than everything else, in that, like, we see the spirit world in 108 when Aang meets Roku, but not in the episode that's actually called the spirit world, even though Sokka actually goes to the spirit world, but obviously he never explains what he saw there. So that's kind of confusing. And then, like I mentioned at the start, something like, say, Yue becoming the moon spirit is explained, but it's probably one of the more odd things that happens in ATLA, considering the details that they're talking about. And the reason I mentioned this one as being sort of confusing is that you think of the specific details of what they say. They say that, I think Ko is the one who explains to us that Tui and Law both passed into the physical world and took on a mortal form near the beginning. So immediately we get confirmed to us that, okay, the reason why Tui and Law can both be killed is because they chose to move from being immortal spirits who, if their form is destroyed, they just take on a new form. They chose to become mortal fish in the physical world. They still have powers, they are still spirits, but they are able to be killed, whereas otherwise spirits are not. Then you add in the factor that the moon spirit gave some of its like life force to Yue to help her with what she was struggling with when she was born. Then when the moon spirit is killed, Yue is able to actually assume that role because she has part of the essence of the moon spirit. It's confusing because it's the first time the idea that like a spirit can like split up their essence basically is brought up, and it's never really mentioned again beyond that. And to me, I'd find some confusion there, just because the idea of I lean towards like, that shouldn't really be possible, because if they made the decision to become mortal, their life should just be their life. And even though they have powers that basically allow waterbending to happen, why are they then able to split up their life among kind of different beings and so on? And then especially, like, why is their life force able to sort of like somehow like resurrect Yue from what was going on? Now that actually has some explanation with the whole spirit water thing and just it being able to revive people. But again, even that's like, going into the other one I have here, just as I said at the start, the Avatar state plot running from Book 2 finale to the Book 3 finale is also a fairly complicated one, because, yeah, Aang dies in 220. It's confirmed that he was, at least dead for a little bit. But the spirit water that Katara had brought him back to life. But then, like, did he die in the Avatar state? And they never actually really explain that situation, in that, the explanation is like, he was this close to going into the Avatar state full stop, but because he was close enough, there was actually some damage to his Avatar spirit, as well as his own body, and he was killed. But because he was revived so quickly, that's why like the Avatar cycle didn't start again. And then you have to go into like the web comics and get that whole explanation of how he like reconnects with the Avatar spirit, but then his physical body is still damaged, and there's like the damage to his chi network, and the chakra hadn't fully unlocked. That's probably one of the most complicated explanations of a plot point in all of Avatar, is this running plot. And it has a simple solution in the end of like Aang's back hitting off the rock, basically allowing the flow of energy, finally completing the unlocking of the final chakra, and he immediately goes into the defense mechanism Avatar state. But it takes a little bit to get there. The point I'm making is just that like some of the Avatar stuff is just as complicated as the Korra stuff if you look at it that way. But we're more fine, I think, with accepting the Avatar ones as just their simple explanations without needing to go into the complicated ones. But like the Korra stuff seemingly is like too big of a problem. That Koizilla makes more sense than Cosmic Blue Korra, even though Cosmic Blue Korra actually has more information to back up the explanation for what's actually happening. So it's just the point of like, you have to, I think, treat Korra with the same level of fairness in terms of the amount of thought that you put into what's happening. By all means, you are allowed to dislike the writing choice that, like, why did they have the Book 2 finale result in a big battle between giants? But if your issue is that you don't understand why they're giants, or like the specifics behind what happened, that's sort of on you for not paying attention, not really the show. Similarly with the whole Jinora thing, I think most people like the fact that Jinora is given an important position. So with the Jinora one, it does tend to just ultimately come down to most people being really confused for some reason with what she did, even though it's pretty simple at a base level. And again, just paying attention to the dialogue and what's happening here makes sense. And then, also, how can you not love this sweet knee strike that she delivers while she's giant Cosmic Korra? And for her as a character, I suppose, given what's happening in the Book 2 finale, it is incredibly fitting that in a plot that is pointing out that Korra is powerful on her own, even without Raava, that she is able to win the final fight kind of on her own, using her own spirit. And what form does her own spirit take? The character of Korra, what does it take? It's just a giant version of herself, where she fights primarily hand to hand, rushing straight at her opponent. That is Korra to a T. That is exactly who Korra is. So the idea of her just kneeing Vaatu in the face in the battle for like the fate of the world is incredibly fitting in my opinion. And it works for the personal idea of what they were going for here, with Korra is not defined by being the Avatar. She's not defined by Raava. And I think it's very fitting in a way that Raava doesn't ever make Korra big in any of their like Avatar state things. It's just Korra, her height with bending amplified through Raava, but Korra's spirit, when she chooses to amplify it, she chooses to go big. And I think that's a interesting distinction to have there as well. And I'll just end with this quote from Iroh here. You'll find that if you look for the light, you can often find it. But if you look for the dark, that is all you will ever see. And when you think about that in terms of like opinions you see online, videos you see online that are like the big video essays about Korra, that's exactly fitting. That like if you look to just find people criticizing Korra, that is all you'll ever find. But if you look for someone who actually wants to talk about Korra and really treat it as a proper and good part of the Avatar universe, you can find it, but it's a little trickier. It's a little trickier because oftentimes the negative voices can be the ones that shout the loudest. So I'll just end with, in a way, what all of this was referencing, and it kind of brings it full circle. Find the light in the dark, in a video all about the episode Light in the Dark. So that's been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.